Kuro Neko, The Alternate Ending by Christina Cheng. Catwalker leapt half-heartedly across the rooftops in the direction of home. He had just recharged Plague, which meant he could take as long as he wanted in getting back. It felt good to be using the cat Miraculous again, even if it wasn't designed to fit his true personality. He felt a heaviness grow inside him as he thought back over his night with Ladybug. She had seemed impressed by Catwalker's performance. She had even told him he was perfect. So why did he still feel this ache inside? He lowered his head with a sigh, and as he did, his eyes caught sight of a familiar figure on a nearby balcony. Of course, Marinette. She always seemed to have an answer for everything, and no one understood him as well as she did. She was pacing back and forth across the narrow balcony, throwing her hands up as if in a heated discussion with someone. Catwalker paused, but she appeared to be alone, perhaps practicing another love confession to the mysterious Buttercup. He stifled a laugh as he thought back to the time they had spent together not too long ago, then hopped gracefully down onto the roof of the bakery. "Mind if I drop in?" Marinette turned mid-sentence, her eyes widening in surprise. "Catwalker? What do you, sure, if you want to, that is." He smiled appreciatively and landed softly on the balcony. "Don't let me interrupt." Marinette's cheeks flushed as she said, "Oh, yes, well, I was just talking to myself. Don't bother yourself about Cat. I mean that. It's really nothing at all," she finished quietly. Catwalker tilted his head questioningly. "It didn't sound like nothing. You seemed very passionate about it. Please continue. I know it feels good to get things off your chest, and I promise I'm a good listener." Marinette hesitated, then sighed. "You're right. Something is really bothering me." She looked up at him and crossed her arms with a sly smile. "But you have to promise not to get offended by anything I say." "Why would I be offended?" "It's about cats." Catwalker held back a laugh. "Oh, I see. Maybe I can give you some insight on the rest of my kind." Marinette smiled, but it quickly turned to a frown as she said, "Well, that would be great, because I can hardly understand them at all." She resumed her pacing, and Catwalker took a seat behind her. "All I know is cats are nothing but trouble. They don't listen to a thing you say, run headfirst into mischief, always want attention, and then poof! They disappear and take your heart along with them." She plopped down onto a seat beside him. "Someone I know lost their kitten earlier today. For no reason, it just decided to run away and leave its poor owner heartbroken. I mean, why do cats do that anyway? Don't they know they have someone who cares about them and just wants to keep them safe? But no, that's not good enough for them, so they just decide to go off on their own, leaving you to wonder if you'll ever see them again." She clenched her fists as the frustration rose in her voice. "Cats are just so selfish. Not you, Catwalker, you're perfect. I mean, not that I know you very well, of course, but from what I've seen, actually, I'm also Cat Noir. You're nothing like regular cats, and..." She froze as her brain finally registered what he had said. Her body stiffened, jerking dangerously sideways, causing her to fall off her seat, but Catwalker quickly leaned out and caught her before she hit the ground. She shrank back from his touch and jumped to her feet. "Sorry, I guess I should have led with that. I forgot that the suit would make you unable to recognize me." "What? But there's no way. You can't possibly be Cat Noir. The two of you are nothing alike. I think I would know if..." He stood up and gestured toward her calmingly. "Marinette, it's really me." She crossed her arms and stared challengingly into his eyes. "Oh yeah? Prove it." A small grin grew across his face. "Well, I know you like hamsters. You make awesome bread. You're a terrific mouse. And you have 3 sons burning in your heart for the ever-enchanting but elusive Buttercup." Marinette gaped at him, her eyes having grown wider with every phrase, and her arms now fell limply to her sides. "Cat Noir?" He rubbed a hand sheepishly over his neck. "Now that I think about it, this must have been pretty weird for you having a random superhero showing up on your deck. Thanks for taking me in anyway." Marinette recovered herself and crossed her arms. "Well, it wouldn't be the first time I've taken in a stray kitty." Catwalker smiled as he thought back to the night he had first visited Marinette, as a superhero self, that is, and the way they had cheered each other up after both their hearts had been broken. He felt his heart sink as he remembered why he had come and turned to sit quietly on the railing. I'm sorry about your friend. I know it's hard to lose someone you love. I know you said cats are nothing but trouble, but maybe that's because trouble always follows them. Maybe they don't want to leave, but feel like they have to. Like some invisible force is pulling them away from the people they care about, and they've no choice but to try to leave and take all the trouble with them. Marinette stared at him as a tangled mess of emotions filled her mind. Memories of the night spent with Catwalker flashed through her head, mixed with feelings of anger and regret over losing Cat Noir, as well as the shock of finding out he had been her new partner all along and was now sitting on her deck talking to Marinette. Confusion and frustration battled within her, and she had half a mind to lecture him about the consequences of deceptions. But as she looked back at him, sitting alone against the dark sky, her heart softened and the concern she felt for him overcame everything else. She moved to stand beside him and placed her hands quietly against the guardrail. Why did you stop wanting to be Cat Noir? He hesitated, then lowered his head sadly. It's complicated. Marinette shifted uneasily, then asked, Is it because Ladybug isn't in love with you? He quickly looked up. No, it's not that. I mean, yeah, it hurts, but I never expect her to return my feelings. And if I know something's really bothering her, I try not to do it. These past few weeks I've tried to be very mindful of her wishes. No more teasing or flirting, and haven't even called her Bugaboo. Though, between you and me, I think she secretly likes that one. The only thing I can't change is the way I feel about her. Marinette felt the breath catch in her throat, and she smiled sadly. He really had been trying these past few weeks, ever since her second fight with Glaciator, and she knew how hard it must have been for him to suppress such a constant habit. She wished she had noticed his efforts instead of constantly blowing him off as a persistent flirt. She knew Cat Noir meant well, and it touched her heart that he'd been trying so hard to please her. So, if it wasn't about love, why did you give up your Miraculous? He sighed. Because I feel like I'm not her partner anymore. What do you mean? Of course you're her partner. Really? Because today she said I was just a partner like any other, no different from anybody else. Marinette stiffened, then looked down. I'm sure she didn't mean it like that, but it's true. Ever since Ladybug became the guardian, she's grown in powers and responsibilities, but me, I'm just the guy who can destroy whatever I touch. With all the new superheroes, Ladybug doesn't really need me. Half the time I just break the object holding the Akuma, something Ladybug could probably do on her own. Marinette looked over at him in surprise. It had never occurred to her that Cat Noir would think his powers were useless or out of place. It's true, she did often rely on his cataclysm to destroy the akumatized object when she could sometimes break it herself, but often the item needed to be disintegrated completely, something only a cataclysm could do. I'm sure Ladybug wouldn't ask you to do it unless she really needed you to. And isn't releasing the Akuma the whole objective in your battles? That sounds pretty important to me. Catwalker shrugged. I guess, but it's not just that. I don't mind working with other holders, and I'm happy to help in any way I can. But I feel like Ladybug is hiding stuff from me. Marinette unconsciously clenched the guardrail tighter. What do you think she's hiding? I don't know exactly, and that's the problem. We used to tell each other everything. Well, as much as we could without giving our identities away. But now, Ladybug hardly talks to me anymore. I know she's busy, and I don't blame her. But I feel like I'm always the last person to know what's going on, and the stuff I do know doesn't apply to anyone else. What do you mean? Like Ladybug's rule about secret identities. His voice hardened, and he kept his eyes fixed on the street below them. She says we can't know anything about each other, but I recently discovered she was the one who allowed two holders to know each other's secret identities, despite the fact that they are a couple. Marinette froze as her thoughts started to Alia and Nino. How did you find that out? He paused. Well, I probably shouldn't tell you, Marinette. I hope I haven't said too much already. She looked down, then leaned heavily against the railing. I get it. Being a superhero must be hard. He tilted his head slightly. In some ways. But but it's also the most incredible thing that's ever happened to me. Not only did I get to meet the girl of my dreams, but for the first time I've been able to make my own choices, to be myself without worrying about what my father will think of me. His voice grew in enthusiasm, and the sparkle returned to his eyes. Running through the rooftops, fighting supervillains, being with Ladybug, Cat Noir gives me the freedom to finally just enjoy life, free from expectations, and be happy for once. I love every second of it. Marinette smiled, thinking back over Cat Noir's joyful antics and the way he energetically faced every problem. She loved being Ladybug, but it came with a heavy burden to bear, and often felt more like a constant pressure rather than a chance for freedom. Still, she knew how exhilarating it was to jump across the rooftops, flying through the sky, spending time with her trusted partner, not to mention having Tiki, a constant companion and friend who was there for her in ways no one else could be. Her heart sank as she was hit with the realization of all he had almost lost. You were so upset with Ladybug that it made you willing to give all that up?